Stand-up comedian Andy White is my guest this week. I knew Andy many years ago in the early 1990s when we were both students in Lampeter. And we start by talking about Andy's victory on the weakest link and how the prize enabled him to pay for his wedding. We talk about Andy's work for the National Autistic Society. We talk about our apprehension of slightly obscure celebrities. We learn how he ended up at university. He did town planning at Aston before going to Lampeter to study English. He talks about rattling tins for rag, going to London to protest against the BNP. Andy explains why he didn't mind that Lampeter was in the middle of nowhere, how he threw himself into it, and we talk about the political careers of some of the people who studied there and some of the eccentric figures who populated Lampeter. We find out how Andy got into stand-up, how petrified he was when he did his first gig. He tells us about the different ways to read an audience, the difference between doing a stag night and a hen night. He tells us what happened when he has lost the audience. We learn about the so-called 11 o'clock rule. We talk about deconstructing a gig and the concept of counterpoint. Andy remembers when I used to keep a folder about the chart. This is a surreal part of the interview, when Andy remembers something that happened in November 1991, and then I suddenly produced, because I still have it in my office here at Kent, the folder concerned. We find out what Andy used to listen to, including REM, how he will listen to Classic FM when driving to a gig. We learn what was the first record that he ever bought. And he talks about the musicians and comedians he has seen on stage. He talks about going back to Lampeter. We find out what his dreams were when he was young, how Andy reflects on bad mistakes from the past, and why golf club after dinner gigs don't go well. What an immense privilege this week to meet Andy White for the latest in my series of nostalgia interviews. My name is Chris Deacy. It is wonderful to have a celebrity. I think, did you win the weakest link?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, I did. Way back in 2002. Yeah. What it was for up-and-coming comedians. And originally, I didn't want to go on the show because, you remember the weakest link. She was always very mean, hostile to people. And I thought, well, I don't want to do that. I'll come off looking bad, and even if it's for charity. Yeah. And then they said, oh, no, you can keep the money. Yeah. And it's at the celebrity rate as well, so it was a larger amount of money. Yeah. So I thought, yes, I'll do that. Yeah. I'll do it. And I said to my girlfriend at the time, if I win, I'll spend the money on our wedding. Yeah. And I won, and subsequently spent the money on the wedding. I sort of won in May 2002, and we got married in October 2002. And I think as soon as I've finished and I've won, and I rang her up and said, I've won, I think within about 2 days, she got all the wedding plans sorted out.
So Anne Robinson, we can thank for your nuptials.
Yes,
and one of the people I'm going to be interviewing next week, who's a former Lampeter alumnus, or a Lampeter alumnus, get the former, she did a version of The Weakest Link. She presented it in Cyprus.
Wow.
So there's obviously a thread here. So I thought I was interviewing all the Lampeter alumnus, but clearly I can't get Anne Robinson, so I'll get anybody who's been in her proximity. But Andy, we go back a long way.
We do, yes.
I think you were one of the first people I met when I went to Lampeter in 1991.
Crikey!
And we could, of course, you're talked about a lot because you have to be honest, you have more Facebook friends than anybody I know. So after this, I want half of your Facebook friends, so I kind of look as though I'm slightly important.
Well, do you want to know how to get Facebook friends?
I would love to know.
Accept everybody.
Yeah.
That's the way to do it. Yeah. Even the ones who have slightly Russian-sounding names and cleavage. Yeah. Accept them.
Well, I see those, and often, of course, the gender doesn't obviously match the name, or in some cases, you think, oh, that's a nice-looking person. You scroll down and discover that all the other people on the list don't look anything like the person in the photograph, which makes you suggest that it might be a scam. But do you know what? Sometimes I'd rather have 5,000, which is the maximum number of Facebook friends, than I would have 350 of people who I really care about. So thank you.
But recently, wife and I and my son, we were doing a sponsored walk for autism. My son's autistic, sort of high functioning, but still autistic. So we thought we'd do a thing for the National Autistic Society, and if you raise enough money, you get a ticket to the Drayton Manor.
In Tamworth.
In Tamworth, yes, because they've got Thomas land there. and my son loves Thomas Land, and so they thought, oh, autistic kids, they love trains and things like that. That'll be popular with them. So she put out a request for sponsors for her friends, and she has about 200 odd. I have thousands and thousands, and guess which one supplied the most sponsorship? It was hers. So she has the real friends.
But I did notice that one of your friends on Facebook is Fenella. Well, she used to be Fenella Haddingham, who I remember from the news on Radio 2. I was like really excited that you see, this is for me, celebrities and not racing car drivers, not even politicians, anybody who came even close to reading the second, reported on the second item in the news in 1999 for me is like, or whoever did the night ride program overnight in 1992. That for me is a true celebrity. So you're the closest I've ever got to somebody who is like gold dust.
Oh yeah, because I have this thing as well with slightly obscure celebrities. I remember once I was standing on the platform of a tube, and I was looking across. I thought, that's Joshua Rosenberg, the legal correspondent at the BBC as he was then. And I thought, I can't share this with anybody because nobody else. And similar thing, I was on train platform, Birmingham, and Jonathan Porritt, who used to be in charge of Friends of the Earth, and another time I was on a train and just putting into Cheltenham, and up stood to get off Roger Scruton.
Oh, the philosopher.
The philosopher Roger Scruton.
The very right-wing philosopher.
The very right-wing philosopher, yes. Looks a bit like John Pertwee in his Doctor Who days. But so there's people like that, and my wife says, I love that about you. You recognise all these people that nobody else.
But you're right on one thing. You can't go up to them, because I was on the train, and this is a bizarre scenario, and the word synchronicity and all the rest of it come up. When I was writing up an old diary entry from, do you remember the Labour mayoral contest in 2000? Ken Livingstone versus Frank Dobson.
Oh, yes.
Now, I was writing this up, as I did many years later. I was going back through some old diaries. It was a long... I was going up to St Andrews, so I had about 8 hours ahead of me. Anyway, about 10 minutes later, put my diary down and was just sort of minding my own business. And I thought, oh, look, there's a man there. Looks a bit like Father Christmas coming out the buffet car. A bit of a limp. And I thought, getting closer, I thought, he does look a bit familiar. And I thought, well, it could be Santa Claus. I thought I was getting very excited. This is my research. Got closer, and I thought, oh my God, it is Frank Dobson. It is Frank Dobson. And Frank Dobson had that look. You knew it was Frank Dobson because he was sort of making but not making eye contact at the same time, and probably thinking constituent. And so he walked past, but I thought, I can't go up to him and say, hey, I was just writing up in my diary about the two, that would have just come across as complete, lunatic. So I could say nothing, but I had to share that with someone.
Yeah.
So, of course, for the next 2 years, I was like everybody. I thought, you never guess who I saw on the train. But I don't know what you do in a situation like that, because sometimes you think that celebrities are going to be really keen to want to be recognised. Yeah. But also in a lot of cases, they're thinking potential stalkers. And I don't want to be. I'd rather be just somebody who thinks, I know who that person is, this is really exciting, rather than go to that second stage.
Yes.
But in your case, you are, I said, you were a celebrity at the beginning, but on the stand-up, circuit, you are making, everyone at Lampeter is like, Andy White, he's like our biggest alumni ever.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Well, certainly for our years, 91 to 94, because everyone is connected to you. You've got 3 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Yeah. But it's like only one Facebook friend away from Andy White.
Oh, wow. Oh, crikey. Yeah. I didn't know that.
How did you do that? Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Well, let's go back to the beginning and so how it all started, because I know you're from Birmingham.
Yeah.
But tell me a little bit about growing up, how you ended up in Lampeter, but childhood memories.
Well, like a lot of people in Lampeter, I ended up, I say through clearing, but no, I was a mature student. I also found it very difficult to find my way in life, generally. I'd done sort of all right at school, but I didn't know really what to do with myself afterwards. I didn't do very well in my A-levels, and then ended up going to Aston University because they accepted me to do something in town planning. And I really wanted to do English. I did that for about a year and completely screwed that up. And then I thought, you know what, I'm going to try and get into Lampeter, because when I was at school, it says, oh, that's that place people go to when if they don't do very well. You go through clearing to Lampeter, and it's out in the middle of nowhere. So I thought, sorry, I'll go there. And so I went there and did one of those new entrance conferences, which everybody loves, because particularly if you're 17 and you go to this new entrance conference, and you have to spend the night there because it is in the middle of nowhere. and you get to go to a student union bar and drink underage and go to a disco, and that's how they lure you in. Yeah. Think, this is brilliant. It's going to be like this for 3 years, isn't it? And so I did that. I had an interview and talked with somebody about, remember talking about Henry V and things like that, and says, oh yes, we'll let you in then. We'll let you in. I thought, yes. And that's how I got into Lampeter.
And I love the idea because I know you were a mature student when you started, whereas I literally was 17.
Yeah.
And I walked through that student union club, we're probably at the same event, and I thought, all these people are drinking, and I thought, oh no, I'm a bit too... I mean, this is me all over. It took me like 25 years to suddenly realise, Chris, spread your wings, live the life. So, and I remember walking all the way through the bar. It wasn't very long. It didn't take me very long. And all the way back again, I thought, oh, no, I'm not ready for this. And I went to the Reflect Lounge. And you remember Donna Mills, as she then was?
Yes.
Who I know has been to see your gigs.
Yeah.
And I ended up sitting there, and we were sitting watching a Gulf War Question Time special. So for me, going to Lampeter, like the first experience away from home, all the possibilities, the drinks, I'm sure there weren't drugs around. Magic Mansion, I guess, was Lampeter's, that's where all the drugs were grown, weren't they? But instead we were watching the Gulf War very studiously around the TV. But somehow, and Donna, who I interviewed a few months ago, remembered that experience. So we had the shared memory of doing something that was like so unstudenty.
Yeah.
But it's like in Lampeter somehow is like we sort of like fitted in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you had an amazing time though, because I know that in all the years you were there, you always had this drive, this enthusiasm. I know you ran for president. We're really excited.
Oh right, I didn't realise I'd had sort of gave people that impression. Yeah, because I used to do things like the rag stuff. Yeah. I really enjoyed doing that. Used to rattle tins. I think it was their best collector one year, something like that. Just sit there rattling tins, getting money. Again, that's just about persistence. If you just stand there and rattle the tin for about 6 or 7 hours, you will get a fair amount of money. Whereas I think a lot of people would just do it for an hour and then go shopping somewhere. So I did that, and also it's probably where I sort of started sort of doing performance stuff. I mean, I'd always done sort of public speaking at school, but I remember writing a load of sketches and getting people to be in those. One of whom was John T. Stern.
I remember. Doctor Who Society.
Doctor Who Society. Not only that, also contestant on Big Brother.
Oh, right. Well, there you are. Well, I definitely want your Facebook name.
Yeah, I got him to be in some sketch. It was very sort of E.L. Wisty sort of character who was obsessed with Southend. I just thought it was appropriate for him. So that, and the sort of the political stuff as well, doing the odd demonstration. I remember, oh crikey, we went down to London to protest against the BNP, and there was probably about 13 of us, but as a proportion of the student population, I think we had the highest proportion of students come down from all the universities in Wales, because we tagged along with people from Swansea and stuff like that. And I remember, that was very unfortunate, because that sort of ended up in almost a sort of riot. I remember a wall of a cemetery collapsing under the weight of people, and then we all just left feeling very bedraggled and slightly ashamed, I think. But did things like that. What else did I do? Oh, of course. Oh, yeah, a bit of studying as well.
Yeah. Actually, it was really funny because in those days, registers were not taken in. See, again, I say I missed the point. I went down the union. Nobody was going to ask for my ID. I didn't drink. Nobody took a register. These days, if students don't go to classes, someone like me tells them off very sternly.
Yeah.
Not in a John T. Stern way, but in a very, very stern way.
Yes.
And yet, the really funny thing is, of course, nobody took a register. Nobody necessarily knew who we were, but it was kind of like it was the best anchor in the sense that go to the lectures, do all those things, and then in the evening, it kind of felt it was a small town. Everybody knew each other.
Yes,
I thought Lampeter was the best place for balance because you could do it improperly, you could do everything out of balance, but there was the scope. If you were sufficiently organised and orderly, you could have the best student time because everyone was on that campus. If you didn't drive, and most people didn't in those days, you kind of were stuck. So it was like either you just have 3 miserable years, or you say, I'm going to go for it.
Yes.
And I think I know which category you were in.
I did, yes. Yeah, I really enjoyed my time. I didn't mind it was in the middle of nowhere because we made things happen. We put things on ourselves. And also, as you know, we had the Film Society, which we put on the film once a week. And also, I remember sort of not having a television meant you actually had more conversations with people. And of course, this was pre-internet as well. Yeah. In fact, I remember when I ran for president, I was the first person ever to put on there election literature, an email address, and people, and I was laughed at by some. That's a bit high tech, isn't it? Back in 1994, as it was. But yes, so really, yes, I did really get into it and enjoyed it. And I think I remember writing somewhere when you pointed out the anniversary of a recent anniversary that it.
Yeah, it's links in with the comedy. Years since we graduated.
And linking in with the comedy thing, there was a sitcom, an American sitcom, Community. Have you ever seen that?
I don't think I have. No.
Ah, right. It's brilliant. You should watch it. It's not only funny, but there's all sorts of really interesting sort of philosophical ideas they explore in it as well from time to time. Written by Dan Harmon, and it's at this community college in the States, and attracts all sorts of different characters. It reminded me so much of Lampeter, because you'd have the sort of the weird dorky ones, Abed. You'd have the there was a sports guy played by Donald Glover. So you don't have the Rugby Society people. You'd have some mature students. In fact, Chevy Chase is in it.
Yeah.
Plays this guy called Piers, and I thought he was dead, honestly. And the lead character is some sort of really cynical guy who is a lawyer, but he faked his qualification, was found out, and now has to go back to community college. And the whole seasons of it is about how he becomes a better person. And gives up all this cynicism, but it is a great series, and all the crazy things they got up to just reminded me so much of Lampeter. And that's
and my sense with Lampeter as well is that it was the kind of place where a lot of people would have been dwarfed or just absorbed in any other university, but it was the place, because the space was so small, big characters tended to blossom there. We've had former presidents of the student union going on to be members of parliament, and it just sort of felt that it was
Carl McCartney.
Carl McCartney, yeah.
Is he the only one so far?
To become an MP. Well, we have, of course, Dick, whose surname will come to me in a minute, who's the Cornish National Party leader. So we have a lot of people who've gone into politics, and even Belinda Humphrey, who, of course, who I think who taught you. I know she ended up, and I saw a YouTube clip of her somewhere in like Lincolnshire or Suffolk, and she was a Conservative councillor, and she was talking about making sure that the playgrounds were suitable for the young men who otherwise might find themselves on drugs. So again, sort of some sort of kind of surreal career moves for people who went from this very small Welsh town, but sort of made it big in the world of Suffolk party politics.
In fact, I've said my sister-in-law is Fiona Venner. That was.
Oh, I remember very well.
Yes, she was women's officer. I remember she stood for welfare officer. And now she is a cabinet member on Leeds City Council. Responsible for family and children's services, as well as having managed a charity, a sort of women's refuge, mental health sort of charity in that area as well.
And that's amazing, because also that shows a great continuity. That's one of my big things and what I'm trying to get at in the nostalgia interviews, because even if somebody is doing something now that doesn't seem to necessarily match in like job title what they might have been expected to do 30 odd years ago, the sort of continuity of purpose or the career trajectory, that's kind of a nice thing.
Yes.
Because when you meet up with people you haven't seen in decades, and suddenly you think, why on earth was I a friend with you? So I've got nothing in common. That's not a good thing, and that's why it took me years to actually go on Facebook for all sorts of personal reasons, but also just to suddenly then find that the people at Lampeter moulded me.
Yes.
The conversations I had, I kind of feel like I grew up at the age of 18. Yeah. Of course, maybe I made the mistake of never leaving. Well, I was there for 10 years. I did 3 degrees there. Yeah. But I kind of feel that those sort of, and yourself very much included in that, those friendships, even if the people are no longer physically around, the way in which you'll just sometimes think, that conversation, led me down a certain path. Or sometimes I might be working on a book or teaching the students, and it's that conversation over pool in the quarry in 1992 that you think, that's what started it. So do you have those sort of experiences as well?
Yes, I think there's one very odd little thing is, you remember, was it Mr. Walford? Mr.
Walford, David Walford, Count Walford.
Is it? Because he had 2 costumes, didn't he? Yeah. During the autumn and winter, he'd wear his 3-piece pinstripe suit, and then during the spring and summer, he would wear his tracksuit.
Yes, he would.
and he wore these sort of pince-nez glasses, and he had this very, very precise way of lecturing. Remember one of his lines from his talk about Kant, he said, imagine if we were the spherical being.
Yeah.
And he always used to carry around a copy of Heidegger's Being and Time, which I thought, well, that's intriguing. That's intriguing, that. But I never got round to reading it or looking at it while I was at Lampeter. But I remember some years hence, I thought, I must look into this. And I then started reading about sort of Heidegger and things like that. And it was never taught to me, but just seeing him with that and really enjoying his sort of Greek philosophy lectures as well.
There is that vaudeville angle that, that sometimes you can just be terribly erudite and very boring, but just say, I'm going to teach, I'm going to impart wonderful information. But with David Walford, as you saw, there was clearly this sort of other side that he came across as this very old school academic, but it was sort of very clear that just in terms of the way he presented himself, he was either, as he no doubt was, very eccentric, but also you kind of felt that there was a performance element to his teaching. And all the rumours. I said Count Dracula, but the rumours were, of course, he descended from Transylvania, but people kind of believed that. But you wanted to believe this narrative because it fitted with this persona that he was cultivating, and so I don't know whether anybody ever quite penetrated who David Walford was. Who would want to?
That reminds me, talking about that, I forget who it was now, an academic from the English department told me at one of the Christmas parties that he said he'd once seen a ghost. And said, well, weren't you terrified? He says, oh no. Why should a ghost be something that terrifies you, my dear? So I can imagine that now. He consorts with the undead.
But it is interesting that sometimes people go into professionalism. I've been working in academia for many years. I kind of wonder, and I think this comes out very much in my own post, whether I kind of wanted really a career in radio, and still do, but I'm wondering if when I'm teaching my students, I'm delivering, of course you do stand-up, we'll come on to that in a minute, but whether I'm sort of delivering the sort of radio programme that I would have done if I'd gone into a different career. So it's almost as though I can't get that out of me. But in terms of what you do with comedy, when did that begin? When did that interest? Was it something that you kind of knew that you were good at university? Was it accidental? Did you always have that burning ambition to go on stage?
I think I always enjoyed performing, but specifically comedy. What got me into it was that somebody put me up to it when I was working at a call centre after I left Lampeter, and it was a guy who used to run his own production company as well as working at the call centre as well. And I thought I'd like to get into something sort of media related. So I says, "Can I help you? Can I help you out? Can I help you out?" And I don't know what it was, but he spotted something about me and says, "Have you thought about doing stand-up comedy?" And I says, well, yeah, I'll give it a go. I've done some performance stuff, written some comedy, that sort of thing. He says, okay, well, I've arranged for you to do an open tryout spot at Jongleurs in Battersea in London in a couple of months' time. I thought, okay then. So that gave me 2 months to write 5 minutes of material to do my first ever gig, which I remember the day of the gig. I was, crikey, I was petrified. I couldn't eat at all. Couldn't eat. But spent all day going to the toilet, so I don't understand why those two things are happening at once. And I get there to this venue. It's a proper big comedy club. It was a big chain at the time, as you probably remember. And they're having this competition for acts they hadn't really seen before. And most people, when they do that sort of thing, they've been on the sort of comedy circuit, particularly on the London pub circuit, for a few years, sort of honing a decent set before they do this. And so the MC, a guy called Rudy Lickwood, was asking people, say, what have you done before this? And they say, well, I've been on the circuit for a couple of years. I've been on circuit for 3 years. They asked me, so what have you done? He says, well, I was in a production of A Midsummer Night's Dream. In fact, it was at Lampeter. We put on in the old building quad as one of the rude mechanicals. And that was my my comedy circuit. In fact, I was so naive because when people say the circuit, I assumed it was a bit like the districts and circle line, and you went round sort of clockwise or anti-clockwise round the country doing the gigs in a certain order. And so for a few years after I did my first gig, when I was doing the circuit, people would ask me if I was doing circuit. I said, well, no, I don't think I am doing the circuit because I'm zigzagging all over the place. And then eventually I did realise, this is what it is. Okay. But yeah, the first gig, I didn't win the competition, but I did very well considering it was my first one. Yeah. Remember, I got on stage and they were playing that music. It's an Ocean Colour Scene, is it? They always seem to play that sort of music, that particular song at comedy gigs. I got up and I picked up the microphone. I started speaking and couldn't hear my voice, what was happening. What happened was I'd stood on the mic lead and the mic popped out. So I just sort of picked it up, put it back together and says, yes, ladies and gentlemen, I am a professional. Yeah. Got a little titter and away I went. And I can't remember any of the gags I did at that time, but I did get some laughs here and there. And I thought to myself then, this is terrifying, but at the same time really exhilarating. Yeah. I'm going to keep doing this.
And presumably every performance you have the same kind of apprehension. You've got to judge the audience. But I remember going to a few comedy shows in Lampeter, like the Christmas, and some of they were booed off the stage because I think somebody had obviously had this pre-prepared line. It would have been Christmas '92, and this guy was doing a John Major impression, and the thing that did it for him was he said, it was like the 1st of December, and he was like, typical bloody students, can't wait for Christmas. You've got your Christmas due, because obviously term ended well before Christmas, so it was like the Sunday before. And he made some joke about how students obviously were so, either lazy or out of sync with the season or something like that. So there was just something with having a dig at the students for having a Christmas party a month before Christmas. And I don't know why he thought that might be funny, but somebody obviously thought, okay, well, let's try and provoke him. So they either booed or shouted something back at him or said, how dare you criticise this sort of thing. Anyway, so he said, well, if you don't want to, and a bit of swearing involved. So that didn't help. Then to swear at your audience, okay. So there was aggression at that point. And then he carried on with his routine. I just remember this weird John Major impression. He carried on and he just walked off. But then the other guy came on who was meant to follow him. They were obviously the headline act. And he lasted like 3 minutes and he did exactly the same thing. And he was like, well, you've just booed my friend off the stage. Well, I'm not very pleased with you. So, and we were all like going, well, what did we do? At the end of the day, okay, you've got to read the audience. Yes. But then again, don't get me wrong, I've given lectures and someone's thought, why is nobody interested? Is it the content? Is it my delivery? But I'm guessing, though, in your case, you probably kind of know what you need to do in terms of being in the right frame of mind or the right mood. But you can only do what you can. I know you've done cruise ships.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Yeah. But no, and I'm guessing an older clientele. But I mean, how do you pitch it?
Right. Well, sort of varies. I mean, sometimes I've done sort of clean gigs. Say, okay, then. Just go through the set. So, any swearing, any allusions to anything overtly sexual, remove all those and just do that. Trying to think what else there is. And if it's a sort of really leery gig, there's lots of stag parties and hen parties in. As a lot of the jonglers ones were, you've got to sort of hit them hard with something really funny at the start and make sure you take the mick out of the hen or the stag. Well, the stag, they expect it for the stags, not the hens, though. The hens, they're very protective of the hens. You're always very nice to the hens. Even though a lot of the time, I don't know why this is, but the all-female parties, when they get drunk, they tend to be the loudest and the ones who want to chip in. But because it would be sort of what's ungallant? Is that a word? to have a go at them, you're not allowed to have a go at them. So you just have to roll with the punches with that one. But definitely have a go at the stags. What else? Sort of an art centre gig. Just have to be a bit more sort of gentle with them and not hit them at the start with anything too crude. So that sort of thing. But yes, so you do have to.
And I'm actually in awe of what you do, because when you're doing your gig, it's you. At the end of the day, people are expecting to laugh, and they might say, I'm not going to laugh. I'm not going to. He's going to have to really try very hard. Yeah. But if I'm giving a lecture, it's okay to be boring, because no one's expecting. They're not coming for entertainment. Yeah. Well, or if they, or maybe that's what they're not telling me. But so if I manage to present a lecture on something, it might be myth or Bultmann or demythologizing or Heidegger or being on time or something like that. Yeah. If I'm doing something like that, and I'm able to say something that can be a bit funny because it's not supposed to be funny, then if I say something like the time with you didn't expect the microphone obviously not to work, so you managed to cover yourself, and I kind of feel that I'm in a safe zone because it's okay as long as I keep going. Then in some way I'm gonna get through it. But in a way, it's not supposed to be about me. But if it accidentally then sort of just about is about me, as in people want to come to my lecture, then that's just a bonus. But in your case, I'm guessing that some evenings you come away thinking that was amazing. And there must be a point a few minutes in when you just know whether you've got the audience or not.
Yes.
But what happens when it doesn't work out?
When you've
lost the audience.
When you lost the audience, it doesn't work out. Sometimes you just have to plough on. You just have to plough on, do the thing, do your time, and get off. Now I've been into it sort of a few years, as it were. I know that the occasional bad one is just an occasional bad one. I've had enough good ones now to know, okay, that one didn't work out. There might be a lesson or two to learn from it, but the next one will more than likely be better. I mean, when I first started out and I'd have the occasional bad one. I remember once I had a bad one down in London, and at that point I didn't drive, and I got to Euston Station and I rang my wife from a payphone, because again this was actually pre-mobiles as well. And I said, I think I'm going to have to give this up. I did 5 minutes and I got nothing. And she says, don't be silly, you've had a few good ones before, just keep at it. And I think this was about 1999 or something like that, and here I am still at it now. So yes, that's how you get through it. And also name drop, there's a comedian now, Sarah Millican.
I know.
She has this thing, she calls it the 11 o'clock rule. So if you have a bad gig, you're allowed to feel really bad about it and really grumble and shout and stamp your feet about it until 11 o'clock the following morning, and then you put it behind you and look forward to the next one. Unfortunately, the same applies to a good gig. You can think you're an absolute comedy genius until 11 o'clock the following morning, then okay, but how about the next one? So that's what I do.
But there is something about going on the road, as you obviously do, and you go to venues. Sometimes you might know some of the people, often you don't. But I guess, I'm doing something on a very different level, even like with the nostalgia interviews, but just that sense of doing something slightly outside of your comfort zone, but knowing that sort of, that you're on a mission, you know that that there's a goal that has to be met, and you kind of like, whatever happens, you will drive. And I guess my many cinema trips are all the same sort of thing. You will drive through the snow, you'll drive through the fog, because you have to, there's the destination there. And if you don't do that, you kind of feel, well, how many, we don't live forever. This is the moment, this is the day when this is what I have to do. If I don't do it today, I may never get the same opportunity again. So you're living off adrenaline, and I'm guessing that you must be doing that 11 at night and 11 in the morning, really, as you're preparing for the next gig.
Yes, living on adrenaline now. Well, I don't get as scared as I used to. I just get sort of more excited. Well, it depends on the gig. I mean, the cruise ship ones, yes, was elements of fear because there was so much riding on them. Because because the ships, they'll have lots of ships in the line, so if you do well, you can get loads of gigs, and they pay very well, and it means you get a week's holiday as well, effectively, as well as doing some shows. And
although, of course, then at 11 the next morning, you're still, unlike normally, I'm guessing that 11 the next morning, don't have to answer this one, but 11 o'clock the next morning, you don't normally then see the people that you spoke to the previous night. But on the cruise ship, you've got them all the time, and you're like, and I guess also the whole persona thing is interesting, because I don't know when I'm lecturing whether I'm in persona or not, and I like to think that even when I'm on Facebook or something, this is Chris Deacy, that there must be different personae, but I don't deliberately think, right, I'm going to go into this mode. I guess sometimes I'm more serious than others. But in your case, how does that work? Because I guess like deconstructing a gig or talking to somebody who's been to the gig when you're then in a sort of a more neutral setting, should we say, and you can be caught off guard. That must be quite hard sometimes.
Yes. Well, couple of times people have seen me at a gig. I remember one time somebody saw me at a gig. It was my dentist actually came to see me, and he said, "You came on stage and started." I didn't recognise you to start with. Well, is that Andy? Because I just seemed very different. And a friend of my brother came to see me at a gig as well. He didn't actually know I was on. He was just there. He says, "It's like it's like you're a different man on stage. I'm definitely sort of more out there and extrovert than I am in real life. But yes, when I talk to people after the gig, or even if I speak to somebody before a gig and say, "Are you going to be on next?" I do feel a bit awkward because I think, you're expecting me to say something funny now, aren't you? And I'm thinking, no, I've got about 25-30 minutes of act to do, and I'm funny doing that in the context of a stage. Then I'm funny. A lot of the time, day to day, I'm not going to be funny. Our exchange is not going to be as hilarious as you think it's going to be.
Yeah, wasn't it Penelope Keith, to The Man of Born, who would always say, because she would do those sort of comedy roles, very light comedy, but people would think, "Oh, come on, tell us a joke." And she said, "Well, I'm not that kind of, I might be in comedies where somebody's written a script and I'm an actress who delivers them, but the idea that I'm going to give you like a routine, that that does not come from The Good Life or To the Man of Born." Yes. And I guess you probably need that counterpoint. I mean, we all have it, that sometimes if you work in an office all day, you need to do something by night, sort of, you save Gotham City or something, but, but you need to do kind of something that is a counterpoint to that. Yeah. And I know plenty of friends who will sort of talk about how, they have the most orderly of jobs and sort of very, very sensible and very stable by day, but they go on like dating sites by night and take all sorts of huge risks and they don't know what they're doing, but terribly chaotic. But you need to do that in order to suddenly ensure then that the day job you can do week in, week out. Otherwise, there's a point when you're just going to burn yourself out. So we all need to have something in life as a counterpoint. But do you have that in that regard? But you do a lot of wonderful stuff on Facebook. Some very funny, like politically, the stuff that's happening in the news as we're speaking. And I'm thinking, is this part of your routine, or is this just an additional thing, or is it just that you're so like 24/7?
It's mostly it's mostly an additional thing. I'll see people talking about it, and it's a nice practice thing. Oh, put something funny. Yeah. About that, and also it's become a bit of an addiction for me because you get that almost instant feedback. Say, "Oh, I'll put that," and in a couple of minutes I'll get a like or a dislike or something like that, or some sort of comment, and I thought, "Oh yes," and now if I do something or see something, I thought, I must put that on Facebook, see what sort of reaction I get. It's as if we've all become our own sort of reality TV stars in a way, well, in a very limited sense of doing the Facebook. So yes, I sort of almost become. It's made me more self-conscious about my life. I thought, how will this appear to somebody? Or can I twist this around so it comes across as amusing or interesting on the Facebook or something like that, or the Twitter? But yes, it's an addition. Sometimes something from there will make it into my act, but usually, particularly if it's something longer and so more thoughtful or serious, it won't get into stand-up. But it's just a way for me to sort of get a thought out and see what people think, just self-expression in that way.
And I know that you've got a gig this very evening, so I won't keep you for more than 10 minutes.
Okay.
But I was going to ask you questions along the lines of musical influences, the sort of things. I mean, I was obsessed when I was young with the charts, the whole sort of, the music.
I remember.
You remember?
I remember. We went to your room. And I think you showed me a folder of all the chart hits or something.
Okay, now this is bizarre because this is radio. But I have here, and I did not know you were going to say that, but this is the same book.
Ah,
now, isn't this rather weird? So it's got all the charts. I used to write out the charts every single Sunday, as you say, very neatly and in different colours. So I'll have to put a photograph of this up later to accompany what we're talking about. So you're probably thinking, Chris, oh my God, right, you haven't changed. When's my gig? So we did have those conversations.
We did, and I remember sort of bringing the religious thing. Remember we played Tell Me There's a Heaven by Chris Rea, and we had a discussion of the theological implications of that,
because it was about child abuse. And I think, and my sister walked in at that point. I've got this face. Now this is funny. We're going back probably November 1991.
Yes,
and for me, you see, this is funny because that was a period when a lot of the artists like ABBA now were kind of not really in vogue, but they were always played down the Union. And a few years later, ABBA became massive. And I kind of always thought that in a place like Lampeter, and I used to put I used to put Minnie Riperton on the jukebox, and so it's like, that sort of at the time just seemed, in 1992, 93, wasn't an obvious thing that people would be listening to. But I kind of sort of look back on that period and think what was great about Lampeter is I thought, well, we all have our own musical tastes, we all have particular idiosyncrasies, but you were allowed to be who you could be.
Yes.
And I think in that sense, I didn't change, but I was in an environment where I didn't feel I had to change due to peer pressure. But what about yourself? So you knew all about some of my interests. What were you listening to in those days? What sort of interest do you have? What sort of do you listen to in your car on your many journeys to gigs?
Wow. Well, I remember at the time I didn't need to have my own sound system or anything like that, because everybody was playing everything around. So I remember REM. I didn't own an REM album, but I knew all the songs from all, because everybody around me was playing. I remember one song that particularly stuck in my mind was Night Swimming from the I think it was from the Automatic for the People album, and it's a sort of sad, plaintive song, and I thought, this is the song I will play on my last day in Lampeter or something like that, because it will sum up how I feel about saying goodbye to this place in terms of its tone and that sort of thing. But in terms of musical influence, to tell you the truth, I spend a lot of time listening to Classic FM when I'm driving to the gigs. So I have a Classic FM or Radio 4 is what I do. I usually switch to Classic FM when the Archers start. Keep up for everything. Or late at night when I'm driving back, when I've got the relaxing tunes on. Podcasts as well. I've actually been listening to a Philosophy Bites podcast. You've been listening to 15 minutes sort of brain fix, get your things going. But in terms of other musical influences,
first record you ever bought, what was that?
Oh crikey, that was I think it was Dream of the Blue Turtles by Sting.
Wow.
I think that was the first one I bought. And I remember I was very much into Jean-Michel Jarre at the time, all that electronic stuff of his.
Did you go to any gigs in the Arts Hall? Because we had Kirsty McCall. I don't know if you went to see her.
Oh, yes. I remember going to see Kirsty McCall. And who else? What was it? Doctor and the Medics. I remember them as well. And
Jules Holland was also there.
Oh, Jules Holland, yes. I think they said we had to wear suits and ties to go see that.
Yeah, that might have been like a freshers' ball or something like that. I didn't go. I went to Doctor and the Medics.
Yeah, but I don't think, because I didn't have a suit. So yes, went to see those. And who else?
Because a few years after you graduated, we had The Crazy World of Arthur Brown.
Oh, crazy!
And somebody said he did a degree in philosophy. But, so I thought, where's he been for the last 34 years? Yeah, he went off and studied philosophy and then turned up in the Union Extension to deliver fire with all the acts. It was a little bit surreal.
I remember one time, I didn't see him because I didn't know him at the time, Gil Scott-Heron.
Oh, that name rings a bell.
Yeah, he was, it was very, sort of a very political... African-American musician, very influential. But he came to Gil Scott-Heron. That sounds a bit Welsh and folky to me. But he came. But I remember mostly the comedy gigs though. So perhaps the seeds were sown there, and there was people like Hattie Hayridge, Mark Steele. I remember getting up on stage once, being took up on stage by a guy called Kevin McCarthy, man with beard, and he got me to take part in some sort of magic trick. And I've gigged with him subsequently. Yes, and he still remembers those days. Mandy Knight as well. I remember insulted my girlfriend at the time. She had her arm around me. So, limpet woman, and started flirting with me outrageously.
There was a guy. I remember there was a guy with spinning. He broke records on stage.
Yes, Woody Bop Muddy. Wow. Record graveyard. Yeah, and he'd throw rice. Staple diet of the third world. Rice. That was brilliant. That was. And I remember girlfriend, now wife, and I laughing uproariously at his song about the abattoir. Yeah. Abattoir, it isn't far. We're all going to the abattoir to see the animals die.
But you see, the thing about those gigs is that they were kind of it was the incongruity that people would come a very long way to perform at Lampeter. And Kirsty McCall was probably the biggest star of that time. And I obviously used to wonder if they quite knew what they were expecting, because it's the sort of place that, you can't sort of like just jump on the tube, jump on the bus and go somewhere. You're kind of like, once you're there, you're stuck. So if it doesn't work, then you're kind of in this sort of strange sort of limbo type place where you want to get away from the place, but actually you've got to wait till, the next morning before Di's Taxis or something appears. But you are going back to Lampeter, of course, next summer, thanks to which, something that we've been in touch about. But have you been back at all since graduation?
To visit my wife, who was then she was studying as well. She was in her first year when I was in my third year, so I've went back a couple of times while she was still studying there. But I haven't been back, and no, because I know quite a few comedians have done gigs there since, but I haven't. So I'm looking forward. So
that's going to be really good. So
yes.
But I'm going to ask you two more questions.
Okay.
One is, what would let's say your 15-year-old self think about what you're doing now? Have you fulfilled the dreams you had when you were young? Have you exceeded the dreams? Did you have dreams when you were young?
I don't know if I did have very specific dreams when I was young. I mean, did I want to be an actor or a performer or something like that? I think I probably did. I think I wanted to be a science fiction writer, which is something I haven't done yet. I think I sort of lack the confidence to do that, because I've got to learn all sorts of stuff about physics and that and everything, and I that's next on my list to do that, but no, I haven't.
But you still can. But very last question then, and admittedly, I normally ask some more nostalgia-based questions, so this will be a little bit out of whack with some of the questions already asked. But are you a looking back or a looking forward kind of person? You're not allowed to answer yes.
Okay. I mean, I'd like to be a looking forward sort of person, but to be honest, I do often find myself sort of haunted by things, and sort of thinking a lot about past mistakes, or suddenly realising something was bad that I did back then. So yes, I am a looking back person, but I'm not the sort of person who looks back a lot of the time and thinks, those, what wonderful times they were. Well, there were good times, don't grant me, but most of the time I regret things. I know sort of thing a professional comedian should say about.
Yeah, but I mean, there is this question, isn't there, whether you can be nostalgic about negative experiences, because I guess it's character building. You can do have a really bad night, a really bad gig, but it might spur you on in a way that you wouldn't. It gives you a motivation to sort of move forward and make sure that you don't repeat that mistake or whatever. It may not be a mistake; it's just an unfortunate coincidence of circumstances.
Yes.
But do you think you can be nostalgic about negative experiences in that sort of way?
I'm trying to think of something that's actually a bad experience that actually spurred me on in comedy. I think what generally happens is if I have a bad experience, it goes bad, I feel bad, and then after a few days, I don't feel bad anymore, and then move on to the next thing. I think that's the way it works with that. What else? Golf clubs. If I'm after dinner at golf clubs, that never goes well. So I've done that 2 or 3 times, not gone well. So I've learned never to do those things.
Yeah. Well, you know how to take the swing. Yeah. But Andy, it has been awesome to meet up with you again in 25 years, and we're not going to leave at 25 years.
No, not at all.
Because I know I'll be seeing you next summer. But thank you for being my guest this week.
No, thank you.